Dear viewers, welcome to this lecture on theory and design of disinfection processes. This is part 1 of the 2-lecture series. I am Professor Naveed Ehsan from Department of Civil Engineering, Jamia Millia Islamia, New Delhi. In this lecture, I shall discuss about introduction of disinfection process along with mechanisms of disinfection and characteristics of a good disinfectant. Then a discussion will be made on various commonly used disinfectants along with their merits and demerits. So let us first understand what is disinfection. In simple words, disinfection is the process designed to kill or inactivate most microorganisms, is essentially including all pathogenic organisms present in water. A pathogenic organism, as you might be knowing, are bacteria or viruses or cysts that may cause disease to human beings. Contrast to this is the process of sterilization, which is basically removal and destruction of all living microorganisms, including pathogenic and saprophytic bacteria, vegetative forms, and spores. The process of disinfection intends to inactivate the microbes by using various kinds of physical or chemical processes by altering or destroying the essential structure or functions within the microbes. One of the mechanisms involved in the disinfection is the damage to cell wall of microorganisms, which leads to cell lysis, that is disintegration of a cell by rupture of the cell wall or membrane. Another mechanism is alteration of cell permeability that results in outflow of vital nutrients from the cells. Then change in the colloidal nature of the cell protoplasm and inactivation of critical enzyme systems responsible for metabolic activities. They also help in disinfection. Then let us talk about the characteristics of an ideal disinfectant. In order to achieve proper microbial inactivation or disinfection, a variety of disinfectants are used. An ideal disinfectant used for this purpose must have certain characteristics, which include: number 1, broad application of the disinfectant, that is, it should be active against all the kinds of pathogens. Its action should be rapid, which produces fast inactivation of pathogens. Then it should persist in water for the desired contact period. It should provide its residual in water, though sometimes the residual is undesirable too. An ideal disinfectant should be non-hazardous, that is non-toxic, non-flammable, non-explosive, and should not produce any harmful byproducts during the process of disinfection. Moreover, its measurement and maintenance of dosage should be easy, and also there should be ease in its use, that is generation, its storage, handling, and application at the treatment facility. Finally, it should not cause any kind of health and safety hazard and should be economical as well. Now let us discuss about various disinfection methods. So these methods may be classified into two broad categories. One is physical methods and the other one is chemical methods. Physical methods include boiling, which is the simplest kind of disinfection. Then we have ultraviolet irradiation as another physical method. On the other hand, chemical methods include use of various chemicals, including chlorine, chlorine dioxide, sodium hypochlorite, calcium hypochlorite, then ozone, then use of other halogens such as iodine and bromine. Silver ion is also proved as an effective disinfectant. Under specific circumstances, potassium permanganate may also be used for destruction of various disease-causing bacteria. Now let us discuss these methods in detail, and the first one we'll talk about is the boiling. As mentioned earlier, boiling is the simplest and effective form of disinfection. As we know that heating water to a high temperature, that is up to about 100 degrees Celsius, kills most of the pathogenic organisms, particularly viruses and bacteria causing waterborne diseases. For complete sterilization of a polluted water, it is necessary to bring the water to rolling boil and keep it in this stage for at least 5 minutes. Of course, for higher elevation, 1 minute extra is given for every 1000 meters above mean sea level because of lower temperature at which the water would boil. Boiling is a useful method of water disinfection at household level or at any other small scale treatment, but it may not be feasible for large scale water treatment plants. Now, various advantages of boiling may include that it inactivates all the enteric pathogens, viruses, etc., as they may not survive at such a high temperature for more than 5 minutes. Boiling does not impart any additional taste or color to the water. As in case of other chemical methods, the efficacy of boiling is not compromised by contaminants or particles in water. But this method has certain disadvantages too. First thing is that it does not significantly improve the taste or the odor or appearance of source water. Then another concern is regarding the fuel. The sources of fuel may be scarce, they may be expensive, or sometimes may not be available. As there is no residual in boiling, it does not prevent any recontamination during the storage or transportation of water to the consumers. Then next method under the category of physical methods is ultraviolet irradiation. As can be seen from the graph which is shown on the screen, the germicidal range of ultraviolet rays extends between 200 to 300 nanometers, but in most cases waterborne microorganisms are exposed to ultraviolet light having a wavelength of 254 nanometers at a specified intensity for a specified period of time. The UV light damages the genetic material, that is the DNA of the microbes within the organism, so that it is incapable of continued growth or reproduction. A major operational problem with the UV disinfection is the high turbidity present in water, which inhibits the process of disinfection. So it is often necessary to remove turbidity from the water prior to application of the UV irradiation. Moreover, the residual or disinfectant in water is not possible in this method. Then the advantages of UV irradiation is basically being a physical process. It would eliminate the need to generate, handle, transport or storage of toxic or any hazardous or corrosive chemical. Then it has no residual effect that can be harmful to humans or animals or aquatic life. It is a user-friendly process. It requires a very short contact time as compared to other disinfectants. Approximately 20 to 30 seconds with low pressure lamps are considered as sufficient to achieve the desired level of disinfection. Generally, these units are compact units, hence they require less space as compared to the other methods of disinfection. But on the other hand, low dosage may not effectively kill some viruses, spores and cysts. Sometimes organisms may repair and reverse the destructive effects of ultraviolet through a repair mechanism called as photoreactivation, or in the absence of light known as the dark repair. Then another disadvantage is the fouling of tubes, which is a common problem with these kinds of units, and therefore it requires preventive mechanism. As mentioned earlier, the turbidity and TSS they also inhibit disinfection by UV irradiation process, and also this kind of disinfection is not as economical as the chlorination. But if we compare the cost, considering the cost of safety and hazard prevention in case of chlorination, then the cost of UV are comparable. Then another method, now this is a chemical method which is known as chlorination, and it is the most commonly used disinfection process. Chlorine and its various forms are powerful oxidants that will kill all inactive or inactivate all the pathogenic organisms present in water. Chlorination chemicals are relatively easy to obtain. They are economical, effective and easy to apply. Then typical forms of chlorine which we use in disinfection process are the elemental chlorine, hypochlorites and then chlorine dioxide. Let us first talk about this elemental chlorine. Elemental chlorine is either liquid or gaseous in form. Chlorine cylinders are generally available which may contain both liquid chlorine and gas chlorine in the proportion of about 85% to 15% liquid gas ratio. Then chlorine would react with water to form hypochlorous acid and hypochlorite ions. Depending upon the pH, hypochlorous acid or HOCl, this may also be broken up into the hydrogen ions and hypochlorite ions. Then hypochlorous acid is much more effective disinfectant as compared to the hypochlorite ions. This difference in the disinfection potential of this hypochlorous acid and hypochlorite ions makes pH of water as an important control parameter in case of chlorination. So free chlorine in water consists of both hypochlorous acid and hypochlorite ions. Then if ammonia is present in water, then chloroamines are also formed. First, the ammonia present in water would react with hypochlorous acid to form monochloroamines. The reaction generally occurs at pH greater than or equal to 6. Then these monochloroamines further combine with hypochlorous acid and form dichloroamines, and the dichloroamines then convert into nitrogen trichloride after further reacting with the hypochlorous acid. Chloroamines are effective disinfectant. They all, along with residual free chlorine comprising of hydrochlorous acid and hypochlorite ion, they contribute to residual chlorine and persist in water for longer period of time. And now let us discuss the advantages of this chlorination. Chlorine as a disinfectant has several advantages. For example, it oxidizes soluble iron, manganese and sulfides. It enhances the removal of color, taste and odor from the water. It may also enhance coagulation and filtration of particulates. Then it is one of the easiest and least expensive disinfection method, particularly for large water treatment plants. Use of calcium and sodium hypochlorite is more advantageous for smaller systems as compared to chlorine gas because they are easier to use, they are safer and need less equipment as compared to the chlorine gas. It can persist in water for reasonable period, so it provides a good residual of chlorine in water. But chlorine being toxic, its transportation, storage and handling needs skilled supervision. And being a hazardous corrosive gas, special leak containment and scrubber facilities they could be required for chlorine gas. Moreover, it forms halogen substituted byproducts and may render some taste and odor problem in the water which is treated through chlorination process. It is less effective at high pH also, so it may enhance or increase the desired dosage of the chlorine. Then another form of chlorine that we use is the chlorine dioxide for disinfection. It has a high oxidative potential, more than twice as compared to that of chlorine. It is a relatively unstable chemical and is manufactured generally at its point of use, and it is introduced into the flow stream shortly thereafter. So chlorine dioxide is produced through a reaction between chlorine gas or water solution and sodium chloride. As you can see, this sodium hypochlorite reacting with chlorine, then it produces the chlorine dioxide. It is highly soluble in water, approximately 5 times more soluble than the free chlorine. Reaction of the chlorine dioxide with water results in formation of chlorate ion and chlorite ion and hydrogen ions. as can be seen in this equation. Chlorine dioxide will not react with many organic compounds, and as a result chlorine dioxide does not produce environmentally dangerous chlorinated organics. It is suitable for treatment of water with higher pH, that is pH more than 8.5. So if we talk about the advantages of chlorine dioxide, it is more effective than chlorine and chloroamines, for it oxidizes iron, manganese and sulfides and may enhance the clarification process. Taste and odors resulting from algae and decaying vegetation as well as phenolic compounds are controlled by chlorine dioxide. Under proper generation conditions, that is no excess chlorine, halogen substituted disinfection byproducts, that is DBPs, they are also not formed. Chlorine dioxide is easy to generate at the site, and its biocidal properties are generally not affected by the pH. They are not much affected by the change in the pH. It also provides a suitable residual for taking care of the later contamination if it may occur during the conveyance of water or storage of water. Then disadvantages of this chlorine dioxide includes that it forms specific byproducts, that is chlorite and chlorate. Generator efficiency and optimization difficulty, they may cause excess chlorine to be fed at the application point, which can potentially form halogen substitute or DBPs. It is a relatively costlier process, as the costs associated with training, sampling and laboratory testing for chlorite and chlorate are high. Then it is an explosive substance, so it must be generated and measured on the site. Chlorine dioxide decomposes in sunlight, and it can lead to production of noxious odor in some systems. Then another chemical that we use for disinfection purpose is sodium hypochlorite. It can also be used as substitute of element chlorine. So it is acquired as a liquid in form of sodium hypochlorite containing about 12 to 15% of chlorine. It may also be generated on site from the electrolysis of salt. In this form, it is available in concentrations of approximately 0.7 to 0.9%. Sodium hypochlorite then reacts with water to form hypochlorous acid and sodium hydroxide. Then this also provides free chlorine in the form of hypochlorous acid and hypochlorite ions, as in the case of elemental chlorine. The advantage of this sodium hypochlorite is that it has the similar disinfectant efficiency and residual performance as that of the chlorine gas. The added advantage in this case is that it reduces the hazards associated with handling and storing of chlorine gas, especially if generated on the site. With on-site generation, sodium hypochlorite solutions are less concentrated and less hazardous than the standard supplied solutions. As compared to chlorine gas, it is relatively cheap and can economically disinfect small to large amounts of water. Then if kept under sealed conditions, its shelf life is not a factor. It can be easily stored for about a couple of months. But the disadvantage with sodium hypochlorite is that although it is safer to handle as compared to chlorine gas, it still has some hazardous and corrosive substance. At standard supplied concentration of about 14%, storage and handling of sodium hypochlorite, it requires proper safety procedures and containment. On-site generation of this substance produces hydrogen, which presents a fire or explosion hazard if not properly vented out. Now another chemical similar to chlorine which is also other halogens such as bromine, fluorine and iodine. They may also be used for disinfection. Though these are not common disinfectants but may be used under specific circumstances. Similar to the elemental chlorine, once this elemental iodine is added to water, it hydrolyzes in a pH dependent manner to form hypoiodous acid, that is HIO, and iodide ion is also formed during the same reaction. Again, similar to the hypochlorous acid, hypoiodous acid is converted into hypoiodide ions, and the active disinfectants are elemental iodine and hypoiodous acids in this case. Other species including iodide, iodate and hypoiodide ions, they have mild or little antimicrobial activity. Iodine or compounds based upon iodine, usually in the form of tablet, they are used as disinfectant but only under emergency or temporarily circumstances and at a small scale. For a small scale, 2 drops of tincture of iodine for about of 2% strength, that can also be used and can be considered as sufficient for 1 liter of water at a contact time of 20 minutes. So this may provide reasonably good disinfection. But one has to be careful with the use of iodine, as it has some toxic effect on susceptible individuals. Then advantages of iodine is that it is effective against many variety of pathogens including viruses, spores, cysts. It provides protection across a wide pH range. It has a greater chemical stability. Then due to reduced reactivity with organic nitrogenous impurities, the disinfection demand is less in case of iodine. Its germicidal action occurs over a wider range of water quality conditions as if we compare with the chlorine. Therefore, it works better for water of poor quality. On the other hand, if we look at the disadvantages of iodine as disinfectant, we see as compared to chlorine, higher concentrations of iodine are required to achieve comparable disinfection efficacy. Taste and slight color produced by iodine can affect palatability and aesthetic quality of water. Then excess intake of iodine as residual in treated water is considered unsafe for pupil. Now this silver ion, yet another disinfectant, rather an effective disinfectant. Individual house supplies may be easily treated by passing the water through silver impregnated candles. Another method of silver ion disinfection, it involves introducing metallic silver ions into the water by passing it through a tube containing solid silver electrodes, which are connected to a DC supply of about 1.5 volts. The so introduced silver ions have a strong germicidal action and acts as a disinfectant. The recommended silver dose, it may vary between 0.05 to 0.10 milligrams per liter, and it may require a contact period from 15 minutes to 3 hours. Silver content of the treated water in the form of residual is too small to have any toxic effect on the consumers. Silver ions are effective for both long term and short term. They can persist in water for a longer period, therefore they provide a longer residual effect. The efficacy of silver ion as disinfectant is not significantly affected by temperature. It is generally a low maintenance method. There is no corrosive effect for the pipework as in case of chlorine and other compounds, but silver ion activity slows down under extreme basic environment, that is at pH more than 8, and it may leave a greyish residue behind, thus may render water aesthetically unpleasant. Moreover, some of the microorganisms can build up a resistance against silver and therefore may not be deactivated by the action of silver ions. Then use of potassium permanganate is common in rural areas, particularly for disinfection of well water supplies. The handling and storage of potassium permanganate is easy, and also it is an economical method for treating a well water. A small amount of potassium permanganate is dissolved in a bucket of water and is mixed with the well water thoroughly, which turns the well water pink. If pink color disappears quickly, it shows the presence of organic matter in water. In such cases, more quantity of potassium permanganate is added until the pink color stands for some period of time. In general, the well treated with potassium permanganate is not used for at least 48 hours. The normal dose of potassium permanganate, it varies from 1 mg per liter to 2 mg per liter with a contact period of 4 hours to 6 hours. It also helps in oxidizing the taste producing organic matter and removing iron and algae from the water. Hence, sometimes it is added in a small dose of 0.05 to 0.1 mg per liter even to the filtered and chlorinated water. So potassium permanganate is a moderately strong oxidant and kills many of the harmful bacteria present in water. It is easy to feed. There is no formation of trihalomethanes as in the case of chlorine and its other compounds. Potassium permanganate can improve taste and odor in water, but it causes development of pink color in water. Since it may not be able to kill various viruses present in water, then complete disinfection may not be achieved using the potassium permanganate, and it has limited capabilities of TOC removal too. Then another method under the category of chemical disinfection is ozonation. Ozonation is nowadays one of the most common methods used for disinfection, particularly in case of packaged waters. Ozone is a more powerful oxidant as compared to hypochlorous acid. Therefore, it provides a good alternative to free chlorine. Ozone is produced at the plant itself. It may be formed by passing dry air or oxygen through high voltage electrodes to produce gaseous ozone that is bubbled into the water to be treated. Inactivation of microorganisms by ozone is achieved by direct oxidation or decomposition of hydroxyl radicals, which are also strong reactants. The normal dosage of ozone is of the order of 1 to 2 mg per liter, but it may vary depending upon the quality of raw water. Ozone contact chambers, they are used for supplying the ozone to the water, and it is supplied in the form of small bubbles introduced through diffusers into the ozone contact tank. A proper arrangement of baffle valves ensures complete mixing of gas in water. Then off gas is allowed to escape from the chamber, which is collected and sent to ozone destruction units. Now discussing about the advantages and disadvantages of ozonation. So the advantage of ozonation is that it is a very efficient disinfection method, as ozone is more effective than chlorine, chloroamines and chlorine dioxide. Being a strong disinfectant, it requires short contact time, and ozone oxidizes iron, manganese and sulfide, so the color and odor problem caused by these substances are also removed. Ozone can sometimes enhance the clarification process and turbidity removal. As mentioned earlier, it controls the color, taste and odors also. Then upon decomposition, the only residual is the dissolved oxygen. Its capability to inactivate microorganisms is also not influenced by pH. But its drawback is that the disinfection byproducts are formed, particularly by bromate and bromine substituted disinfection byproducts in the presence of bromide, aldehydes and ketones, etc. The initial cost of ozonation equipment is high. Ozone has to be generated at site, and its generation requires high amount of energy. It is highly corrosive and toxic. It decays rapidly at high pH and warm temperatures, and the major drawback of ozonation is that it does not provide any residual. Then skilled operators are required for maintenance and operation of ozone disinfection units. So let us now summarize what we have discussed in this lecture. In the beginning of the lecture, we defined the disinfection as the process of destruction of all pathogens. We also discussed that it differs from the process of sterilization. We also discussed in detail various methods used for disinfection. Their merits and demerits of each method were also discussed. In the end, it may be concluded that selection of suitable disinfectant or disinfection method is important, which depends upon the characteristics of raw water, the volume of water to be treated, that is the size of the plant. It also depends upon safety and ease in handling the material, production of byproducts, as well as the economy of the process. Amongst various methods discussed in this lecture, chlorination is one of the most widely used processes used at large treatment plants. Use of sodium and calcium hypochlorites is also common. Then ozonation and UV irradiation provides good alternatives to chlorination but have limitations, particularly with respect to their residuals. Other disinfectants such as chlorine dioxide, silver ion, iodine, potassium permanganate may also be used under special circumstances. And last but not the least, in the absence of any other method of disinfection, the boiling is a simple and reliable method. Viewers, with the hope that the present lecture would be useful to you, I would finish here. Thanks for watching this lecture. Thank you.